They marched us into the council chamber under heavy guard, as if we were criminals. The room shimmered with arrogance, floors of polished obsidian, domes of floating crystal, and a cold, sterile light that never cast shadows. Dozens of species sat in floating thrones, gliding silently into position above us. Some were ancient and massive, beings of stone and flame. Others were wisps of plasma or clusters of eyes and limbs folded into chrome suits. And there I was, standing beneath them in a simple charcoal uniform, flanked by 2 security drones humming softly at my sides. Humanity's ambassador. The last one we'd ever send. They didn't ask us to speak. Not really. The trial was for show. A ritual. One of their high consuls, some feathered serpent with 12 mouths and a voice like wind over bones, read the charges in 12 tongues. Aggression, environmental recklessness, political instability, technological savagery. We were, in their words, a predatory anomaly in an otherwise balanced ecosystem. It was almost poetic how they masked their fear in doctrine. I didn't speak until the end. They called on me for final words, expecting some pathetic plea for leniency. I could feel the weight of 1,000 years of conquest in the way they looked at me, like a dog with blood on its mouth, ready to be put down. But I gave them no apology. I said, "You've mistaken adaptation for violence, evolution for defiance. You accuse us of being a threat, but you forget we didn't ask to be part of your little circle. You came to us. You judged us from orbit, measured our worth by your standards, and feared what you saw. Not because we're dangerous, but because you couldn't control us. We are what you fear most, something you didn't create." That stirred them, not with respect, but with contempt. The verdict dropped like a hammer: total exile. Effective immediately, humanity was banned from all galactic contact. No trade, no alliances, no access to shared systems, wormholes, or databases. Our colonies were to be quarantined, our ships marked as pariahs, and anyone aiding a human would be punished under Interstellar Code Omega. In essence, we were erased. They expected despair, collapse, maybe a slow, quiet death on the fringes of the galaxy. But humans don't break that way. We bend. We grit our teeth and dig in. The first time we were thrown into fire, we came out wielding steel. This was no different. When I returned to Earth, there were no riots, no tears. There was silence. And in that silence, something ancient stirred, a stubborn, relentless hunger to endure. From the Arctic domes to the Martian forges to the cloud cities above Venus, a single idea spread like wildfire. We would not fade. We would build. They didn't exile a species. They freed something they didn't understand. And in that moment, staring up at the uncaring stars, I swore an oath. If they would not have us in their galaxy, then we would make one of our own. Exile forced our hand, but also gave us clarity. With no allies, no trade, and no rules, we were finally unshackled from the bureaucracy that once slowed our every step. No more committees. No more waiting on interstellar permits or appeasing fragile alien egos. All that remained was purpose, pure and burning. Project Exodus had been whispered about even before the Council's judgment. A contingency plan. Most thought it was a myth, just another military fantasy tucked away in Earth's deep black archives. But it was real. I saw it for the first time as I descended into the subcrust hangars beneath the Himalayas. There, embedded within the planet itself, were the silent titans of our last hope, the Exodus fleet. They weren't ships as the galaxy knew them. They were angular, jagged behemoths with hulls layered in neutron-carbon alloy and thermal shifting armor that shimmered like oil on water. The Valhalla, my vessel, was the firstborn of this defiance. For kilometers long, armed with weapons banned by every known treaty, powered not by fusion, but by an experimental core that folded space like fabric, allowing us to leap through dimensions instead of crawling along space lanes like ants. She wasn't beautiful. She was brutal. A beast made for survival, not diplomacy. A ship with teeth. 20,000 souls boarded her. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, families, people with nowhere else to go, and no illusions about what lay ahead. Earth was to remain behind, its skies patrolled by cloaked defense stations, its signal reduced to a whisper. The home world would sleep, hidden and silent, while we forged ahead to find new stars. Launch day wasn't marked with speeches or parades, just a silent countdown and a final look at the blue marble hanging in the black. I stood on the command deck, fingers clenched behind my back, staring at the image on the forward screen. It wasn't just a planet anymore. It was the ghost of what we had been. When the Exodus engine activated, the world around us stretched, twisted. Reality folded inward and bloomed into colorless light. Then silence. Not the silence of space. The silence of nothingness. A place between stars, without heat or time. We passed through that unnatural void in under 5 minutes, and when we emerged, we weren't in known space anymore. No beacons, no charts, just raw, untouched frontier. Some of the crew cried. Others prayed. A few just stood there, watching, as a new star loomed in the distance, encircled by an asteroid belt and what looked like a habitable planet. We named it New Sagarmatha, after the peak that once shielded our launch base. We would build there, not just a city, but a future. The galaxy wanted us gone, so we left. But we weren't retreating. We were advancing into the unknown, carving our path through the stars not as guests or beggars, but as sovereign architects of our own destiny. The Council thought they had silenced us. Instead, they gave us the stars. The distress signal reached us by accident. An old emergency code, barely intelligible through the radiation wash of a nearby pulsar. It was bouncing endlessly between rocks in an asteroid belt, distorted and looping. Nothing the Council would bother answering. But we weren't the Council. We didn't ignore cries for help. Especially not when the voice on the recording sounded unmistakably human. We changed course. It took 3 days to reach the Varelian system. The planet wasn't listed in any database, not even on the oldest frontier charts. Varelia 3, a scarred moon orbiting a gas giant, was supposed to be barren. What we found instead was smoke, fire, ruins, a colony, or what was left of it, burning in slow motion beneath a fractured sky. They hit them hard. The attackers had dropped from orbit with kinetic rods, flattening half the settlement before the first screams could even be broadcast. Survivors had fled into the sulfur-rich caves, most already dead from heat stroke or suffocation by the time we arrived. The few that remained were huddled together in broken shelters, malnourished and wide-eyed, watching us descend from the Valhalla like ghosts from forgotten legend. They were human. That's when I knew. We hadn't just been exiled, we'd been abandoned. Pieces of our species had been spread across the stars without our knowledge. Left to rot, left to be prey. The attackers weren't hard to find. Kauran raiders, slavers, 9-foot monstrosities with acid-etched bone armor and vocal cords designed to mimic distress signals. That's how they lured colonies like this one. Pretend to be in need, and when help arrived, consume them. I led the drop team personally. Our exomarines hit the surface in storm harnesses, suits lined with pulse thread musculature and HUDs fed directly from orbit. The Kauran weren't prepared for that kind of fury. We didn't strike from the front. We came from above through the burning clouds like thunder made flesh. Our weapons didn't fire bullets. They unleashed arcs of magnetized plasma, lancing through bone and steel with equal ease. It wasn't a battle. It was justice. We took the last raider alive, dragged him to the center of the settlement, made him watch as we burned his ships and freed every caged prisoner. I asked him if he knew who we were. He spat oil and said, "Council trash." I corrected him. "We're the reason your nightmares have shadows." Then I turned away and let Nova deal with him. She didn't need to say a word. He screamed until his voice broke. We left Varelia 3 with more than survivors. We left with allies. People who had nothing left but rage and fire. They chose to follow us, to fight with us. And so the legend began. Across the outer sectors, whispers spread. Of humans in black armor. Of weapons that sang in the dark. Of a fleet that bore no flag, but left no chains behind. They started calling us something new. The Starborn Reapers. And in time, even the Council would learn that name. They say ghosts don't haunt the living. Memories do. But out there, in the dark beyond mapped space, we found ghosts with beating hearts and names stolen before they were ever spoken. It began with a signal buried deep in a derelict comms satellite orbiting a white dwarf. The encryption was Terran military standard, old from the pre-council era. Forgotten, but not lost. Nova cracked it within minutes. What she found turned our blood to ice coordinates, a list of names cross-referenced with biosignature anomalies, and a header tag only a few of us could understand. Siren Protocol. Human origin biogenesis trials. We set course immediately. The destination was a black site hidden in the event horizon of a dying star. A research station cloaked so tightly it was invisible even to its own reflection. We had to thread a needle through space-time just to get inside. And when we did, the truth greeted us like a knife to the gut. The station was massive, half buried in the gravity well, its corridors distorted with gravitational warping. Time didn't flow cleanly there. Some rooms were frozen, others moved too fast. The walls were covered in biometric locks, keyed to non-human DNA. But Nova, she got through them. Too easily. Inside, we found chambers filled with growth tanks, hundreds of them. Children, adults, even hybrids. Some awake, some not. Human bodies altered and repurposed. Brain stems re-engineered to accept foreign neural patterns. Eyes surgically removed and replaced with crystalline receptors. Limbs extended, bones hollowed to reduce mass. They weren't just testing on us. They were remaking us. That's when I saw her, tank number 037. Small, pale, with silver wires fused to her spine. No older than 10. She was conscious, barely. Her lips moved soundlessly as we approached. I remember leaning in, gripping her frostbitten fingers. She looked at me like she already knew me. And then she said one word, home. We broke every containment protocol to free her. And not just her. We took all of them, 48 survivors. Every tank, every log, every last ounce of data we could rip from that hell. The AI that managed the station tried to stop us. Nova shut it down with a single code. I never asked how she knew it. After the extraction, the Council's seal became clear. This wasn't rogue science. It was sanctioned, buried beneath layers of jurisdiction and deniability. The Council had been abducting humans long before our exile, treating us like a genetic puzzle to solve, farming our species for their twisted experiments. It wasn't exile. It was a cover-up. We returned to the fleet changed. Heavier, angrier. We gave the rescued children new names, new homes, new futures. Nova took tank number 037 as her ward. Trained her, raised her like a sister. But something deeper had shifted in all of us. The Council hadn't just exiled us. They'd violated us. And now we had the proof. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was war. We needed to hurt them. Not with weapons, not yet, but with truth. The kind of truth that couldn't be buried under bureaucratic whitewash or dismissed as pirate propaganda. We had the data. We had the testimony. And most importantly, we had the names. Council ministers, genetic directors, corporate sponsors, dozens of species complicit in the experimentation, the slavery, the cover-up. All of it encoded in the files we'd stolen from that black site near the dying star. Nova proposed the strike. Not a military assault, but something far more dangerous, a broadcast. A system-wide, untraceable info drop targeted at every major communication node across 5 Council core worlds. We called it the Burning Accord. The operation launched from a hidden relay station orbiting a rogue planet. No energy signature, no heat emissions, no broadcast trace. Every file was curated, time-stamped, cross-verified. Raw video feeds of children in tanks. Logs of surgical modifications. Internal messages confirming orders signed by Council delegates. The kind of evidence that didn't ask for belief. It demanded it. When the Accord went live, the galaxy stopped. I watched the feed from the Valhalla's war room as billions tuned in. We didn't speak during the broadcast. We didn't need to. The images spoke louder than any declaration of war. The reaction came in waves. First shock, then disbelief, and finally outrage. Riots broke out on Velzara, one of the Council's oldest cultural centers. Protesters torched the genetic labs on Dalker 9. Entire ships in the Council Navy defected within hours, refusing to obey any order that didn't come from Tribunal Review. Alien scientists, once proud to work with Council-backed biotech, denounced their research on live feeds, some even committing suicide as their names were exposed. In less than 3 days, galactic stability began to unravel. We weren't terrorists. We weren't pirates. We were the spark that lit a revolution. But revolutions are not clean. They don't ask for permission, and they always cost blood. The Council labeled us extremists, fabricators, false flag insurgents designed to destabilize galactic unity. They denied everything, of course, claimed the data was deep-faked, that the children in the tanks were synthetic simulations, that the logs were stolen from unauthorized research sectors outside jurisdiction. But they were panicking. You could see it in their eyes during press transmissions. They were scrambling to keep the illusion intact. But the people, they knew, refugees began seeking us out. Not just humans. Xanthari rebels, Rugari-free miners, even former Council diplomats who'd had enough. They came with ships, knowledge, codes, and hatred. Hatred for the Council's lies. Hatred for what they'd all allowed to happen in the name of peace. A rebellion was forming. One without a central command, without a manifesto. Just a single, burning truth that the Council was no longer worthy of ruling the stars. We didn't ask to lead it, but when the galaxy looked for a fire bright enough to burn the rot away, they found us. Retaliation came swiftly. We knew it would. The Council couldn't allow the Accord to stand uncontested, not without showing strength. But we didn't expect what they unleashed. They resurrected a weapon from a war, so ancient most civilizations considered it myth. A machine built by species long extinct. It had no crew, no homeworld, no mercy. Just a name whispered in old war logs, Titanus Vale. It appeared without warning. One of our outer colonies, New Galatia, went dark. No distress signal, no debris, just gone, vaporized. We dispatched recon teams. Only one made it back, and even then, the footage was corrupted beyond recovery. What little survived showed a shadow blotting out the stars, a ship shaped like a blade too long to fathom, pulsing with gravitational distortions that tore space like paper. I stood on the bridge of the Valhalla as we reviewed the wreckage. Nova said nothing, but I could see the tension in her jaw, the cold calculation behind her eyes. This was no ordinary dreadnought. It was an autonomous extinction engine, one that had once been sealed away by the very Council, now desperate enough to set it free. Titanus Vale wasn't just a response. It was a message: we will erase you. Over the next few weeks, we lost 5 more colonies. Some wiped clean, others left in ruin, survivors broken in body and mind. Their descriptions were always the same: a black leviathan that moved in total silence, surrounded by halos of magnetic interference and folded light. Conventional weapons did nothing. Even our most advanced stealth units were tracked and annihilated before completing a single pass. It was hunting us, but we weren't prey. We turned the fleet. No more hiding. No more spreading resources thin across new settlements. If this thing wanted to fight, we'd give it one it would never forget. We lured it to the edge of a collapsing binary system, Kovari's teeth. Twin stars spiraling into each other, surrounded by unstable debris and gravitational maelstrom. The perfect killing ground. Every ship in our fleet converged. Exomarines prepared for vacuum combat. Engineers rigged our oldest destroyers with antimatter cores set to overload. Nova led the vanguard in a prototype exoframe built from salvaged Council war tech. Faster, deadlier than anything she'd worn before. She looked like a demon clad in fire and light. Titanus Vale arrived, just as predicted. The battle was chaos. Pure, unrelenting chaos. Its hull bent physics. Our ships blinked out of existence if they got too close. But we kept coming. Nova tore through its outer casing, carving through shield layers with plasma blades supercharged by quantum entanglement. I flew the Valhalla straight into its path, firing every weapon we had, every last ounce of energy in our reserves. We breached the core, and then we lit it up. The resulting explosion collapsed one of the binary stars. We barely made it out. A third of our fleet didn't. We buried the dead in space. A moment of silence shared by every species that stood with us. We won, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like the galaxy itself was watching, waiting to see what we'd become after crossing that line. And as I stood amid the wreckage, Nova beside me, I realized something vital. We weren't fighting for survival anymore. We were becoming something else entirely. The war was over, but peace didn't come. Not in the way people hoped. The Council was broken, its core worlds in revolt, its fleets fragmented, its credibility shattered beyond repair. Dozens of species once silenced by protocol and fear now stood defiant. Civil wars erupted. Former allies turned on each other. What we'd ignited with the Burning Accord had become a storm no one could contain. And in that chaos, the galaxy turned to us. It started with desperate transmissions, small colonies asking for protection, old rebel cells pledging loyalty if we'd shield them from the Council's dying embers. Then came the warships, captains bearing flags of fallen governments, requesting integration into our fleet. Refugees flooded our outposts by the millions, Zenthari, Valari, Orin, and even defected humans who'd once worked for the Council. Not out of admiration, out of hope. We hadn't meant to become a government. We weren't prepared for it. But as I sat in the war room of the Valhalla, surrounded by advisors who had once been warriors, scientists, diplomats, and exiles, it became clear we were the only structure left standing that wasn't built on lies. So we built something new. Not an empire. Not another council of elites. We called it the Concord of Free Stars, a coalition bound not by bloodlines or economic treaties, but by a singular principle. No one gets left behind. It wasn't perfect. It couldn't be, but it was real, and it was ours. Nova stood at my side through it all. She had become more than a warrior, more than my second-in-command. She was the living symbol of what humanity had become, forged from pain, tempered by truth, and driven not by conquest, but by conviction. The children we had rescued from the black site now walked among us as commanders, engineers, thinkers. The very generation meant to be erased had become the architects of our future. I remember the day we raised the first Concord banner on Eleron's spire, a shattered planet we'd turned into our capital. The wind howled through broken mountains, the sky streaked with twin moons. Thousands gathered, every species we had freed or fought beside, standing shoulder to shoulder. Nova handed me the torch. I lit the flame. No words, just fire. From that moment forward, we were no longer exiles. We were leaders, builders, guardians. But the galaxy never forgets the ones who defy it. In the far reaches, old enemies stir. Council remnants regroup in silence. Unknown forces, awakened by our conflict, move in the shadows. The stars are watching, listening. And I, Colonel Elias Rhane, commander of the Valhalla, founder of the Concord, am not finished. We were cast out. We rose. We endured. Now, we shape the galaxy not with fear, but with fire and will. Let them come. Let the void send its worst. We are humanity, and we were never meant to kneel.